The Palm Beach Civic Association expands its communication outreach with a state-of-the-art television studio. We call it Studio 33480, the zip code for the beautiful island of Palm Beach. Sponsored by Finley Galleries, our goal is to bring you in-depth interviews with the most colorful and knowledgeable personalities on the island. And now, our host.
Welcome to Studio 33480. I'm Wendy Rutledge. If there's one topic that seems to stir not only people's interests, but sometimes their emotions, it is immigration. Well, with us today is someone who knows an awful lot about it, a leading authority on immigration law. Please welcome Austin Fragomen. Welcome, Austin.
Well, thank you very much, Wendy. I'm really delighted to be here today and talk about my favorite topic.
Yes, you are the expert. And we should say you are director here with the Civic Association. So
yes.
We're happy you're here with us. All right, let's dive right into the big one. The border crisis. I mean, it's a hot topic. It's on the news all of the time. Where are we with that? What can be done? And what about immigration reform? I mean, it's huge. Take any part of that you can tackle.
Thank you. I will attempt to do that.
Thank you.
The first thing you have to understand about the border, which I don't think is properly explained in the press, is that you really have two groups of people seeking to come to the United States. You have one group of people who come from countries where there's tremendous political oppression, gangs run the countries, etc., and therefore many of the people who flee from those countries actually are seeking asylum or refuge. And a good example would be Venezuela. Most people don't realize that 7.1 million people have left Venezuela already. A fairly small percentage of those Venezuelans seek to come to the U.S. But Venezuela, Haiti, Cuba, and Nicaragua are all countries where persons are fleeing and leaving. I mean, some might be seeking just better opportunities, but the majority would have some sort of justiciable claim to refugee status. The second group are regular migrants who are just seeking opportunity, looking for work, and they know that the United States is a very good place for migrants, and so they're taking advantage of the situation and coming across the border. So when you look at this problem in those two buckets, you have to really come up with two different solutions. And what the Biden administration's done is they said, well, what we'll do is we'll set a number, which they set at 30,000 a month, persons who come from the four countries I mentioned. Then they can be paroled into the United States, let in on a supervised basis.
Those are the asylum
Yeah, these
seekers.
are the until they actually file for asylum or file to change their status or whatever. Mm-hmm. And of course, they have to actually make claims for asylum and show that they particularly meet the definition of a refugee, which is they were persecuted or fear persecution on account of, race, religion, nationality, membership in a particular social group, political opinion, which are the grounds. So that's the first group. So right now, what the Biden administration's done is they've said, look, if you come from one of those four countries, you have to come through this parole program, and you can either apply at a border point, a legitimate crossing point, or you can even use a telephone app and make an application. And then you will wait in Mexico until we consider your particular request to be paroled in. And if you don't do that and you seek to enter otherwise, illegally, then we'll summarily reject you under the public health ground, they temporarily part of the public health law says that the public health administration through the Immigration Service or through the Border Patrol can basically deny entry to persons who pose a health risk. Mm-hmm. So it's called Title 42 because you read a lot about Title 42. And that's still in effect. Now, that may go out of effect in May because the president's announced that they're doing away with the health care emergency. So I assume that'll do away with Title 42's applicability. In which case, then there won't be any prohibition on persons from those countries entering illegally and just filing for asylum. I wouldn't think. That remains to be seen. That's the first bucket. Then you have the second group, which are people who are just coming here for a better life. Right?
Is that a larger group of people?
I would say that it's probably 2/3.
2/3. Okay.
1/3 is the persons who probably have legitimate refugee claims, and the other 2/3 probably don't. And we're looking at, let's see, in 2022, there were slightly over 2.1 million persons who entered across the border. And so you'd figure that if you use that formula, the 2/3, 1/3, that would give you an idea of where you come out on it. Also, those are what they call encounters. They don't count the number of people, they count the number of encounters. So about 25% of those are persons who attempt to enter the country multiple times. So the real number is probably closer to 1.6 million, which is still a
huge,
a giant number.
Yes.
So what typically happens if you're not coming under this refugee program and you come into the country is that you're either detained at the border and excluded under this Title 42, which happens to about 40% of the people, or they let you come into the United States, and then if you apply for political asylum, they schedule you for a hearing, and everybody applies for political asylum because they know that there's an endless number of cases.
It buys them some time.
There are over 1 million cases pending for political asylum.
Okay.
So I don't know when they'll ever work their way through that backlog.
And meantime, they're here.
Meantime, they're here. And they come primarily, into the border towns, and then they move on to other cities where they have relatives or they know other people. And part of the government's arrangement is they basically give them transportation if they want to go somewhere else. So if they have a sister in Cleveland, they send them to Cleveland. And if they have a brother in New York, they send them to New York. And if they have a friend in Des Moines, they send them to Des Moines. So that's essentially the way it works. And then eventually there's a hearing, and if they're found not to be eligible for asylum, then they'd be ordered to leave the country. And of course, that's assuming they ever showed up for the hearing, which
many
may
don't.
have or they may not.
Yeah,
and
right.
That remains to be seen. So
But is that a broken system?
So that's what I would suggest is hardly a system at all, right? So because where does this go? The only thing that's controlling it all is this public health ability to summarily exclude people and prevent them from filing for asylum, which is this Section 40, this Title 42.
So take that away.
Once they do away with that, then there's in the Biden plan, there's really nothing that's going to be a deterrent. And it was in the Trump administration, it was due to Title 42 that he was able to control the number of people crossing into the U.S. as well, so that nothing's really changed in that respect other than the numbers of people have increased because there's a general, there's a general belief that you wouldn't be detained and they'll let you pass through into the U.S. As I say, 60% do. So what do you have to do to fix this? Well, first of all, we know these people are coming here to work. And we know most of them actually find work and perform, we'll call them, essential work jobs, unskilled labor, semi-skilled labor. So the first thing we need to do is we know we have a shortage of people to do that kind of work, right? We know right here in Palm Beach. I mean, you look around at all the people, many of whom are here, the majority of whom are here is completely legally, but working for all these companies and landscaping and everything else. So we know there's a need for these workers from South America. So I think that the first thing you have to do is set up a program where more persons can get work permits to come here and work legally if they're doing jobs that are in short supply. That's the first thing. The next thing you have to do is you have to screen all the potential applicants for refugee status, do a preliminary screening, particularly if they're not from one of the countries, the Haiti, Cuba,
Right.
Nicaragua, and Venezuela. If they're not from one of those countries, then they should have a preliminary interview. It's called a credible fear. Now, do you have a credible fear of persecution? So they have to make out they should have enough people available to hear these claims and where they need to refer
And
them.
on that suggestion, that would get rid of some of the backlog.
That would get rid of the back. They need to be current on the numbers.
Right.
Even if they do all the current cases first and worry about the backlog later, because those people are already here, and so that's
Right.
that horse is out of the barn, as the old expression goes. So they need to get that under control, because right away, what'll happen is that if cases are heard promptly, and arguably most of them will be denied, unless you're from one of those 4 countries, then the word will get out and people won't come. I mean, that's what'll happen. So if you basically didn't release people, you detain them until you have a hearing, but you do it promptly so that it's not some sort of a
So that
prolonged,
could really change the flow across
change
the
flow
border.
tremendously. Yeah, it would. It would stop a large number of persons that are coming, and then you could continue the Biden parole program for persons from the countries where there really is persecution. So that would be a very good step. Then, of course, you have to work with Mexico because all these people are coming illegally into Mexico too.
Yes, they
or most
are.
of them are, although some come legally into Mexico. They're persons that are the border crossers that are apprehended are from all over the world. There are large numbers of them from China. There are people from even from the Ukraine who get to the United States by getting out of the Ukraine and going to Mexico, which is crazy, right? So
Well, is it the border is huge? It's porous.
it's
Is there any recommendation to do the wall, to make it less porous?
Yeah, I think that's one of the things you have to do. You basically need to have a physical or virtual barrier, in areas that aren't very heavily populated. I think a virtual border is sufficient. Trip wires, cameras, things like that, and then you can have Border Patrol people respond when they have to. That's what they do in the Canadian border. They don't have a wall, as I think we're all well aware. But in the heavily populated area, of course, you really have to have a physical barrier. But yeah, you definitely need to do that, and you also have to motivate Mexico to stop stop persons coming from Central and South America through southern portion of Mexico. As you know, that's a very small choke point there. So it'd be fairly easy for the Mexicans to help us out to a greater extent. And of course, longer term, you have our vice president who visits Central America and talks to the leaders of those countries about improving conditions so people don't want to leave. But that seems like a very long-term project.
A great goal, but
right, a great goal.
not an immediate answer.
Not an immediate answer. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But I think you need to put all of these pieces together simultaneously.
You're not making it sound easy.
It's not easy. No, it's not easy. That's for sure.
At all.
Sure.
So tell us about, what are your thoughts on these couple of governors from Texas, our own Florida governor, sending the busloads of immigrants to these so-called sanctuary cities? What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I think you have to first assume that they all were willing and wanted to go, right?
And can you make that assumption?
Well, they purportedly that's the case.
Okay.
The governors involved say it's the case. I mean, I've never interviewed any of them, so I have no idea.
Okay.
So, but assuming that's true, the reality is that virtually everyone who's admitted to the U.S. in this temporary status, waiting hearings and whatnot, travel on to another destination, and many of them go to the same cities. The difference is that they go to they go to join relatives or people they know, or the community at large. So I think the big problem with the sanctuary city is that just the busload shows up, and then the city of New York or whatever city, I'm most familiar with New York, they have to deal with the situation that they have essentially additional homeless people. That's the problem. In the first cut, it's just having additional homeless people, and all these sanctuary cities seem to be the ones that have more homeless people than they need in the first place. So this just adds to the burden. So if you think about it, what they're doing is they're going to the federal government and they're saying, hey, look, we got all these additional people, and we need to have money to support this program. If you think about it, you'd say, well, maybe if we didn't let them all come here to start with, and we spent the money screening them quickly and sending them home, that'd be a lot cheaper than sending money to sanctuary cities. So it's in terms of obviously it gets a lot of attention, and the politics of it are to try to force the these basically democratic controlled cities to put pressure on the administration to deal with the border. So it's it's really a political ploy at the end of the day. I don't know that they're sending enough people that it's, when you consider how many hundreds of thousands they have to deal with, that it's making that much difference.
But it is a message, definitely.
Right, it's a message. And probably half of them would have gone to those cities anyway eventually. So that's certainly, it's a showcase.
So one of the things that I think your firm deals with and is really interesting is this global competition for talent. These highly educated, highly skilled, highly desirable workers that I imagine are wanted in many countries around the world. How does that work in terms of immigration law?
Well, it's, the U.S. is the probably preferred destination for high-skilled workers. We're talking here about with competition for talent. We're talking about high-skilled workers, people with degrees,
often going to the tech industries,
degrees.
right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And just to give you an idea, 38% of the Nobel Prize recipients in the U.S., the U.S. citizen Nobel Prize recipients, started out as immigrants. 38% of them.
Wow.
25% of all the workers in STEM fields, science, technology, engineering, or math, 25% of all those workers in the U.S., which has about a 2% unemployment rate, were foreign nationals or are foreign nationals. So this is a a big part of our economy, and it's because we have a skills gap for workers with those kinds of backgrounds and skills. So we have a visa category for high skilled workers, and we allow 85,000 persons to come a year, 20,000 with graduate level degrees, and 65,000 with at least a bachelor's degree. As it turns out, about 75% of the persons selected have graduate degrees. But here's the question, or big problem. Is there 85,000 slots? Last year, there were 483,000 applicants.
So
So
they
it means
want
only
to come here.
20% were able to come here. Now, the majority of those are graduates of U.S. universities. So they've come here to go to school, and the majority of them have graduate degrees. And then when they apply to stay here, apply for one of these high-skill visas, there isn't one available. And so that's what's happening. Now you contrast that with countries like Canada, and they say with their population, which as you know is about 40 million, something like that. So it isn't as large as some of our state populations. But Canada allows 50,000 foreign students who are educated in Canada to get a fast track to remain in Canada and become residents of Canada. So if you figure our population is, roughly 10 times the size of theirs, we should be accommodating this 400,000 people, particularly those that we educated ourselves.
Is there a move to expand that number from 85?
There's a lot of resistance because there's always a very big debate about, whether there really are Americans that can do these jobs, which is very curious because it's, I think the statistics show that there's plenty of jobs for STEM workers, particularly with graduate degrees, and particularly those with modern technologies. Regrettably, we have a certain number of, persons in the U.S. in those fields who, need to get reskilled or,
Yeah, this skills gap thing is for another entire interview because I'm sure that's a big, big problem. Just very briefly, I mean, when COVID came on the scene, countries created strict restrictions and regulations with regard to moving around into and out of the country. Where are we now with that here in the U.S. and maybe some of the larger countries?
Well, we're basically getting rid of COVID restrictions. Different countries have, these restrictions vary, and they fall in a couple of buckets. One is there aren't any, right? That's one possible restriction. Most countries now don't have any restrictions on returning citizens. Like the U.S. has no restrictions on returning U.S. citizens or permanent residents. But we still have restrictions on persons that are coming here as non-immigrants, as visitors, for instance, and they have to be, fully vaccinated. There are other countries where there is a bigger concern, like China. If you leave from China, Hong Kong, or Macau, you have to show that you had a COVID test. And
Still, you still have to do that.
Yeah, from those countries. Yeah, the EU and the UK really don't have restrictions except on China also. And then there are other countries who require either vaccinations or COVID tests. So it's important to check and find out what the rules are, just as one has to find out what the visa restrictions are and requirements. It's important to find out what the COVID restrictions are. So in many cases, that's there really aren't any. But there's some countries where you need to still fill out a health form, right? I recently went to Spain, and I had to fill out an online form, and got a confirmation back that I had to show when I got on the plane. But I didn't have to have any tests or anything.
So they're going away, but you still need to check.
You need to find out.
Yeah.
Yes. Definitely. You could be running around the airport looking for COVID.
Well, Austin Fragomen, thank you so much for being with us. You're just a fountain of information and a lot of kind of hot button topics that you know about. So we appreciate your time.
Well, my pleasure. Enjoyed speaking with you, and hope this is helpful to your audience. So thank you.
Positive it will be. All right. Thank you so much. And that wraps it up for us in the studio. Thank you, as always, for watching, and we'll see you next time right here in Studio 33480.
Studio 33480 is brought to you by the Palm Beach Civic Association, our sponsor, Finley Galleries, and our viewers. We welcome your thoughts on how our programming can best serve our members and residents.